Alright everyone, we're going to try this one last time. Here is my presentation on Edith Craig. This is Edith Craig. She was born in December of 1869. Her parents were Edward William Godwin and Ellen Terry, an architect and an actress, and they had eloped the previous year. She was educated at Mrs. Cole School, a co-educational institution in Foxton Road, Earl's Court, and the Royal Academy of Music. Her educational situation was a very suffrage infused one, so she grew up around a lot of suffrage movement and basically activism that would later influence her life. She began working for the Lyceum Theatre Company, designing costumes and acting on her stage name of Ailsa Craig, and she later decided to start a business producing costumes for several London theatre productions. In 1911, she started Pioneer Players, and they made a lot of sort of like saucy plays. They were like band plays, plays in social humanism, women's suffrage and feminism, and starting in 1915, foreign plays translated into English, which was a very popular thing at the time, considering it made a lot of other plays accessible for English-speaking people. Starting with her personal life, Edith was a known lesbian, and she lived with her partners Christabel Marshall and Claire Atwood. Christabel Marshall starting from 1899, and Claire Atwood joining them in 1916, all the way until Craig's death in 1947. After the death of her mother, Ellen Terry, Edith dedicated her time to preserving her mother's memory and legacy. Edith and her brother Edward both published biographies of their mother back and forth, countering each other's views on what Terry was like. Edith published hers first, and then Edward sort of published his, counteracting it, and then Edith published another one. And Edith transformed a barn on her property to be sort of like a memorial/museum of all of Ellen Terry's work. Edith's sexuality did cause a rift between them, Edward having been stated that Edith's sexuality was a cause of her hatred towards men, starting with the hatred she received from her father, considering that Ellen Terry and her husband did divorce, and Ellen's new partner was more of a father to her than hers own ever was. And here's a little cute picture of them, because they're cute. Most of Craig's most notable shows were from her Pioneer Players days, specifically the Claudel plays, which critics viewed as her best work specifically in that time. Here is an example from the Tidings Brought to Mary, definitely one of her most popular ones. And considering that we don't have any pictures or videos from that time of her shows, I'm just going to sort of be showing quotes from critics, which together you can sort of gather Edith's directorial style. Starting with, there's sort of three key things to Edith's directing style that sort of show up in all the critics' reviews of her shows, starting with this medieval sort of pictorialism thing. It was using scenes that were sort of changing color schemes. They carry spectators into a faraway spatial temporal realm, one critic being quoted saying, "No brief account can do justice to the quality of the play, in which at one movement we seem to be in Rheims Cathedral, and another in the rich cornfields and vineyards of rural France. Miss Craig achieves the imaginative in her simple settings. She has a sense of the medieval." She used these, again, using the changing color scheme sets and anti-naturalistic logic, which, totally affected how people viewed her plays. You can pause it if you want to read the full quote, but I'm going to be moving on to the second key, which is the spiritual key. Another quote is just, "The genius of Claudel lies in his having written on two levels, like the Renaissance painters, who in their fresco propose a reading on two levels of the same mystery, the one of the earth and the one of the sky, the one of the mankind and the other of God." So Edith's directing skills allowed her to completely take this to a new level, and using light and staging, she just sort of created this ghost-like hallucination for the staging, which definitely took people into the world. And yeah, you can pause and read again if you want to get into it. And the last one was poor and evocative theater. Edith used a lot of props and set stuff that anyone could find in the house, so it looked real and definitely drew people into these shows. And you can pause here if you want to read all of that, but I am now out of time. She was influential because she pushed where people didn't want her to push. Here's all of my sources. Thank you. Goodbye.